Greetings shippers, welcome back, and it's time for another Shippable Moments episode, and this time it's taking us back to the Star Trek verse. We're gonna trek it up thanks to the lovely people over on Patreon who vote for one video a month, and we get some good stuff out of those votes. Case in point, today's video, the most shippable Spurk moments. So that's a big ask, so let's get started. But quickly before we do, if you haven't already, please follow on social media to stay up to date, know when we're streaming, and just come on over and chit chat about fandom. It's a good time, I swear. Now, Spurk. A while ago on this channel, we tackled Spurk, though most know it by its classic and simple name of K/S, the pairing of Kirk and Spock, the pairing that started it all. They weren't the first ever pairing, but they were the first of what is now deemed the modern era of fandom to make a lasting impact and shift in fan culture towards the lines of what it is today, not just in terms of shipping either. Without Kirk and Spock, it is quite likely fandom today would look very different. Star Trek TOS, the original series, also introduced many fandom tropes that are still used to this day. We outlined all of this in our video on these too, so if you missed it, you know the drill. Card and link. So in order to tackle these moments, we're gonna have to impose some rules, or this video would be 2 hours long. So we're sticking to the original series. The books, animated series, original movies, and new timeline reboot movies will have to wait. We're also gonna have to break this into more iconic moments, or ones that have had some kind of lasting impact. For Kirk and Spock have interactions that can be deemed as moments in almost every episode. Their relationship is one of the backbones of the entire show, and hence how close they are is highlighted frequently. So we're gonna take some moments that go a step beyond their normal baseline. It also must be noted that K/S in the original series is like a journey. By the end of it, if one was shipping it or not, you will be firmly aware of how close these two are. Now, this comes up every time we do one of these, so we'll address it now. There are people who prefer these two as friends. Absolutely, and that's fine. These videos and shipping in general are not an attack on canon. At least, not always. Most shippers are simply enjoying their view on what the source text is giving them, although there are some who want to burn it all down. Again, shippers are a varied bunch. They're not a monolith. For most, it's all in good fun. Enjoy your Spurk how you want to. Bros, lovers, both? Both is good. Also, I've gotta stop saying Spurk. It just makes me think of sporks, and I don't know, it's one of those words for me. Spurk. Number 10, Mud's Woman. This one is really only on here to showcase what we're not going to be doing, which is highlighting every instance of eye sex. We can't do that, just like we can't do it for Destiel. People have lives. Number 9, Shore Leave. This gets an honorable mention for the episode's conclusion. The whole planet that generates what you want, or your thoughts rather, leave it alone. We're here for the end, where Kirk is convinced it's Spock giving him a back massage.
A kink in my back. That's it. A little higher, please. Push hard. Dig it in there, Mr. Thank you, Yeoman. That's sufficient.
A throwaway ending to some. To shippers, proof positive that Spock is giving Kirk back massages on the regular, and massages are highly sexualized in fandom. Highly. Number 8, The Naked Time. Ah, The Naked Time. The oft-mocked and screen-grabbed episode. Sulu fencing shirtless down a hallway. That's what most people think of. Or the terrible TNG episode, The Naked Now, where they felt they could do the same thing. It doesn't quite come off as well though. But Tasha slept with Data, so we'll always have that. He's fully functional. Anyways, back to the first Naked Time. Due to lax anti-contamination protocols, a pathogen is let loose on the ship that causes people to lose their inhibitions and let their inner fencer fly. This results in a loss of control for Spock, who is found by Kirk, who needs him to do what he does best, save the ship. However, Spock wants to talk about their relationship, namely that he feels friendship for Kirk, and when he does, he feels ashamed. This was a pretty big moment, not only because Kirk slaps him, which, happens often, but because it highlights that these two are friends, and it goes both ways, and just how deep it is for Spock. It's something that causes him so much feeling he has to suppress it. Kirk freaks out in the elevator after, but that's par for the course. Number 7, The Enemy Within, otherwise known as the Two Kirks episode. In this episode, the most dangerous mechanism on the ship that McCoy is entirely right not to trust, the transporter, creates two versions of Kirk, his aggressive side and his passive side, though the episode dubs them his good and evil side. Now, we're not here because of the shirtless quarters scene between passive or good Kirk and Spock. Surprising, I know. But instead, we're here for the ending, wherein once recombined, Kirk thanks them both, stating, "Thanks from both of us," as Spock helped to subdue his evil half and hence get the two halves back together. It's a small thing, but thematically it speaks to two halves working as one, something Spock is quite familiar with, and also to Spock having seen both sides of Kirk and respecting/caring for him anyway, which is a lot after evil Kirk.
Captain Kirk! I'm Captain Kirk!
Number 6, what are little girls made of? People tend to forget about this one, except for the penis statue. Long live the penis prop rock. Seriously, someone had to have noticed that. In this episode, Chapel is going to rendezvous with her husband, even though a few episodes earlier she threw herself at Spock in the naked time. Doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. Mr. Chapel is dying this episode anyway. So, in this episode, there's a machine on this planet that creates duplicates, and they make one of Kirk and send it back to the ship. So, what's shippy about that? Well, in order to alert Spock, he thinks horrible thoughts about him that he would normally never say to him, so that Spock knows it's not him. And what he chooses to use is particularly telling, that being insulting Spock's mixed heritage, a sensitive subject for him. This means that Kirk is already aware of Spock's history and how he feels about it, showcasing that they are close enough for him to know Spock's feelings. A big deal for someone living by the Vulcan creed. Still mean, Jim. Mean. And hurtful. Still, Kirk doesn't know everything. Never forget the awkward moment in Journey to Babel when Spock's parents board and then Kirk asks him if he wants to go down to visit his parents. Awkward. Number 5, the immunity syndrome. This episode gives the shipper a few things, but can be boiled down to Kirk worrying about Spock. Now this happens a lot in various episodes. Someone will be hurt or injured or trapped away from the ship and the other has to pine hard. Really, this could be replaced by a lot of episodes. The Tholian Web, or The Devil in the Dark, or Operation Annihilate, just to name a few. But I picked this one because of the conversation Kirk and Spock have about him going on the mission, and how tense Kirk is while listening to Spock's broadcast.
Do you read me, Spock? Do you read me? Come in, Spock. Spock! Gotta get a tractor beam.
Captain, we don't have enough time to do it. We only have a 53-second escape margin.
I'm well aware of that, Mr. Scott. Get 2 tractor beams on that shuttlecraft.
Let me know which of those episodes you feel has the best concerned Kirk, or Spock. I'll take both. Number 4, This Side of Paradise. Yet another episode that managed to popularize a concept that while floating around, now got its chance to germinate. Pun fully intended. Sex pollen. Even though in this episode, it's more anti-inhibition pollen. So the crew beams down to check on some colonists. One is an old flame of Spock's, who exposes him to pollen so that his control and resolve will weaken and he'll want to stay with her. Well, Kirk can't have that because, well, the spores are infecting everyone. So he needs to get Spock to help him save the ship. Again, the only way to remove the effect of the spores, anger. So he goads Spock into attacking him. This is here more for the spores than again the fact that Kirk knows exactly what buttons to push to get an emotional response. It sent people into a spore spiral, and oh, what if the spores made him open about his desires to be with Kirk instead? What if indeed? Fanfic away. Number 3. Patterns of Force. This is one of those episodes that even if you don't watch Star Trek, you've seen stills from it. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, the two are shirtless in the jail cells together, which for some, they don't even need context, the fic writes itself. And the other reason, this is the Nazi episode. As you can imagine, it was a while before this one aired in Germany, and it actually didn't even get dubbed into German until 1995. So, for the moment, well, Kirk and Spock have to escape their cell that they're sharing together. Shirtless. If the goggles were on, or you were already having feelings, these two's awkward scramble over each other to escape will put you over the edge. Also, Kirk's injured, so add wump to that. Minor wump, but it's wump nonetheless. Number 2, Requiem for Methuselah. This is one of those mysterious entities down on a planet episodes that Trek loves to do to this day. In this outing, Kirk helps an android ascend to the next level of sentience with his sheer Kirk magnetism, which makes her fall in love with him. However, this puts Kirk into conflict with her creator, and it's all too much for her, so she dies rather than see the two of them fight. The fact that his sexiness has caused death once more puts Kirk into quite the depression. However, it's bothering him so much, Spock takes the memory from him so that it doesn't damage him. Now, there's a couple of ways to read this. Sweet/necessary, horrifying, or shippable, or all of the above, some kind of mishmash. You of course know where we're going with it. In this read of the scene, Spock is doing exactly what Kirk begged him for, relieving him of his burden, going to means above and beyond what anyone else would or could. It showcases what Spock will do for Kirk, and also the casualness of their mental contact or bond. There was one fan theory that Spock and Kirk were bonded throughout most of the series, which is definitely a fun way to watch it. And one little reach, outside of this little canonical imposed bubble that we've established, people really take this theory because of the third movie, The Search for Spock. You know, where Sarek comes and checks Kirk for the Katra because he assumes it's there.
Forgive me. It is not here. I had assumed he mind melded with you. It is the Vulcan way. when the body's end is near.
Before we get to number 1, an honorable mention needs to go out to the episode Mirror Mirror, which of course gives us the mirror universe, goateed Spock, and a whole other darker way to view the pairing of these two. Also aesthetically, some people just love this one. And another honorable mention must go to Turnabout Intruder, the episode where Kirk ends up switching bodies with one of his ex-female love interests who now hates him, and Spock is the only one to figure it out and believe him. That episode's really interesting, just from an analysis standpoint. And number 1, I think some of you know what it is. Amok Time. All of it. So I'm pretty sure anyone familiar with the series had this pegged for number 1 from the start. Amok Time is the first episode of the second season and introduces the audience to the concept of Pon farr, which evolved into the mate or die trope within fandom that has now found itself modified and a staple of A/B/O, or Alpha Beta Omega. In this episode, Spock needs to go back to Vulcan to be with his wife, who he was bonded to in childhood, which involves him awkwardly explaining his biology to Kirk, even though it's not something for outsiders. Once there, the amazingly fierce T'Pring decides that she had poor taste and doesn't want Spock. Yes, there are reasons, but Spock. And she makes him fight Kirk. Through some medical trickery, it appears Spock has killed Kirk, which snaps him out of his blood rage, something that was only supposed to be broken by being with his mate. Upon finding out Kirk is alive, Spock not only touches him, a huge deal as Spock is a touch telepath, but his control cracks and he smiles, nay, grins. There's a lot going on here, from concern/love for Kirk overriding his biology, to the loss of control that Kirk often evokes, to the fix this spawned of people believing he would still need to resolve the Pon farr, and that this episode demonstrated the person he wanted to be with, his true mate and match, Kirk. This episode highlights what many fans already knew, that these two share a truly deep bond. Kirk's willing to do anything for Spock, even die in a terribly choreographed fight, and for Spock, Kirk's worth a smile. For some who aren't on board, this is often the episode that sways them, the whole thing. You can't pick one moment. Amok Time, the shippiest episode. So those were some of the most shippable Spurk TOS moments. Which are your faves, and what moments do you feel should have been on here? Share all of the moments down below. There's plenty of Spurk to go around. I'll take any excuse to revisit Star Trek, so I was thrilled this won the vote. A super special thanks to all my patrons for voting and helping make these videos possible and choosing some intriguing topics. There are of course more videos coming soon, so if you haven't already, please do subscribe and hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid. I will see you all again when I can, and of course, there are as many ships out there as there are stars in the sky. Bye bye.